Again, it's a redskin.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to learn how to automate backups using the Google Drive API and Python, or in more general terms, we're going to learn how to use the Google Drive API in Python with the example of backing up files. So first of all, we need to install a couple of modules provided by Google, and for that, we open up a command line on Windows, for example, CMD, on Linux, the terminal, on Mac, the terminal, and we type pip install -- upgrade, which gives us the latest version in case we already have some versions. And we're going to install google-api-python-client, then also separated by a blank or by a white space to indicate that we install a second module. We're going to install google-auth-http-lib2, and as a third module, google-auth-oauth-lib. So those are the three modules. If you press enter, it's going to install. I'm not going to do that because I already have those installed, but this is what you're going to need for today's video. Then before we get into the actual coding, we need to set up the API keys, the credentials, the authentication, the authorization in the Google platform. So for that, we're going to need a Google account. So you can use your own Google account, your main Google account. You can create a test account here. The thing is, the account that you use is going to be the account that is going to do the backup. So if you want to have the backups at a certain account, this is the account that you should use for this video. And what we're going to do here is we're going to log in. We're going to click here on Google Apps. Let me just move this real quick so I'm not blocking this. We're going to go to the apps here, and we're going to scroll down to More from Google. And we're going to click on Browse All Products. We're going to scroll down once more to For Developers, and we're going to click on Google Cloud. Alternatively, you can also just Google Cloud, and you're going to get to the respective page. You want to click on Console here to get to the cloud platform. And there what you need to do is you need to create a project. Now in my case, I already have one. So access forbidden because I deleted it. So let me go to the projects page here. And we're going to go, okay, now I went back. Let me go back to the console. What we want to do is we want to create API keys, credentials for a respective, for a project. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go here to APIs and services, and we're going to click on the OAuth consent screen. This is what we need to do first before we do the credentials. Now, the thing here is that if you don't have a project, you're going to have to create one. So we're going to need a project, an application in order to actually do something here. And for that, I'm going to click here on Create Project. You can also select an existing one if you have one already. For some reason, we're going to call this now Tutorial Backup, whatever. And we're going to just create, and this is going to create a project, and then we need credentials for that project. And this is, we're going to create an app. We're going to create credentials to that app, and we're going to use that in order to access it with Python. Now, what we're going to click here is we're going to click on external because we cannot use internal unless we are part, or unless we are a Google Workspace user. So we're going to click on external. We're going to create, and we need to basically provide some basic information here. We're going to call this now Tutorial Backup App. Now for support email, I'm going to use the neuralgdrive@gmail.com here, which is the test account for today's video. And here I'm going to also say neuralgdrive@gmail.com. Save and continue. For the scopes, we can actually ignore that because we're going to use the scopes in the Python script anyway, so I don't think that we need to do it here, at least as far as I know. And for the test users, we're just going to add ourselves, so we're going to say neuralgdrive@gmail.com, add, save and continue. And that is actually it. We can now go back to the dashboard and we can move on to the credentials. So here we actually generate the client IDs that we need, or the client ID that we need to actually access the application. So we click here on Create Credentials, and we want to have an OAuth client ID. So we click on that, and we click here on desktop app. So the application type is a desktop app, and we're going to call the client whatever, I don't know, desktop backup client create. And now what you get here is the client ID and the client secret. Now, first of all, I hope I'm going to censor this, and if I'm not censoring this, I'm going to delete it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But what you need here is the JSON file. So you click here on download JSON, and you save that on your desktop or wherever you want to save it, but you have to move it then to the development directory. And we're going to call this credentials.json. This is the thing that we're going to use to authenticate the Python script, to authorize the Python script to do anything in the first place. So we have this now on the desktop. Let's move this into the G drive directory here. Sorry, and the basic structure of this project is we have a main Python file, we have this credentials JSON file, and we have some files that we want to back up. In my case, I created a directory called backup files, and here I have a text, here I have another text, and here I have a picture that I drew in Paint. So nothing fancy here, just a couple of files to back up. And now we can get into the actual coding. And I'm going to have to look at my second screen a couple of times because Google has the functions that they named, and I don't know them off of my head. So I have to look into the prepared code here. So what we're going to import here, first of all, is we're going to import OS, and we're going to import os.path. This is not related to Google. This is core Python. And after that, we're going to say from google.auth.transport.request. By the way, most of this should be documented in the Google Drive API documentation. I changed the script a little bit to fit the backup purposes, but the general imports, the general access of or to the API is documented in the Google Drive API documentation. So here, Google Auth Transport Request, we're going to import request. Then we're going to say from google.oauth2.credentials, we're going to import credentials. This is going to be needed for the authentication. From google_auth oauthlib, we're going to, or .flow, we're going to import the installed app flow. From Google API client, and you should have all of this by installing via pip. So .discovery import built from Google API client .errors import HTTP error, and then from Google API client .http import media file upload. So those are essentially the imports, and now we can get started with the actual accessing. And the first thing you want to do is you want to specify the scope. What are you going to do with the script? What are we going to do with the script? And for that, we create a constant list here, scopes, and we're going to add here https www.googleapis.com/auth/drive. So we're going to use drive. Because up until now, we didn't specify that we're going to use Drive. We just specified that we're going to use the Google Cloud platform. And we're going to use that in order to access the Drive. So you can add multiple scopes here. You just look in the documentation or you Google to find the scopes you need. But essentially here you specify what you're going to do. And every time you do that, you have to refresh the token because we're going to save a token. But if you want to change the scope, you need to also delete the token and create a new one. So this is important. We're going to start with credentials being equal to none. And then we're going to now look if we have such a token already. Now, we don't have one in the beginning because we haven't created one, but we're going to have one later on. So once we are authenticated, we're going to use the token to log in. So we're going to say if os.path.exists, and we're going to check if the token.json file exists already. If it does, what we're going to do is we're going to load the credentials. So we're going to say the credentials are credentials dot from authorized user file. So this is the token, and this is going to be token.json with the scopes. that we have defined here. Now let me just see, barely blocking this, there you go. So this is how we load the credentials when we are already authorized, so when we have a token already. Otherwise, if we don't have that, so if the creds is, or actually we don't have to do if not, it's none, we're going to do if not creds, so if we don't have credentials yet, or if not the creds dot valid, so either we don't have creds or they're not valid, so basically expired, or basically invalid for some reason, we're going to say, okay, if we do have creds, so this is a little bit redundant here because we're asking if not creds, and then we're asking if creds. Basically, this is when this happens here, but we're going to do it like that. So if we have credentials and the credentials are expired, and we basically have a refresh token, so and creds.refresh token. What we're going to do then is we're going to say creds.refresh, and we're going to pass a request in here. So basically, if the credentials are there, so we were able to load it from the token JSON file, but they are expired and we can refresh them, we're going to do so by refreshing them. And otherwise, if that is not the case, we don't have credentials. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new flow, an installed app flow, and we're going to create this from a secrets file. So the secrets file is actually a credentials file. So we're going to pass here, and I'm going to do this in a new line, credentials.json and the scopes. There you go. So we create the app flow from the credentials file, and then we can say, okay, the credentials are flow.run local server port equals 0, like that. And of course, what we're going to do, no matter what happens here, is we are going to create that token file. So whether we created the credentials the first time, or we just refresh the token, we're going to update the changes or create the token file. So we're going to say with open token.json in writing mode as token.write creds.toJSON. So this is basically just taking that object and putting it into a JSON file. So that's it for the authorization and for the authentication. What we're going to do now is we're going to get into the actual backing up of the files. And for that, we're going to make a try except structure. So we're going to say try something, accept something. And the exception is going to be, in this case, an HTTP error that we imported as E. And in case something happens, we're just going to print error plus string of E. There you go. And the logic now is that we create a Drive service. So we create a service, we try to access the Drive API with our authorization. So we're going to say service equals build, which is what we imported up here, build. And we're going to build here, first of all, Drive version 3, and the credentials that we need to access that are creds. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a first request, and we're going to get a response from that request. The request is going to be, is there a directory in Drive that has a certain name? And this is the name of our backup folder. So for example, I'm going to have a backup folder 2022 in my Drive, and if I have this, I'm going to find it. Otherwise, it's going to say there is no such folder. So I'm going to say response here is service.files.list, and here we pass now the query, which is name equals, and then single quotation marks, backup folder 2022, and then single quotation mark again, and then and the MIME type. So we want to make sure that this is not a file called backup folder 2022. We want to make sure that this is actually a Google Apps folder. So we're going to say, okay, the MIME type, and then in single quotations again, is application/vnd.google minus apps dot folder. And if I didn't make any mistake, that should be essentially what characterizes a folder with a name backup folder 2022. And then we're going to say spaces equals drive. So this will then give us the actual list of folders with a name backup folder 2022 in the Google Drive API. And we need to execute that to get the response like that. And our goal is now to see, is there something or not? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if there is no such folder, so if not, response, and the response is going to be a dictionary, and what we want to have is we want to have the files, so the actual things it found. If not response files, what we're going to do is we're going to create such a folder. If there is no folder like that, we're going to create one. So we're going to say file metadata equals, and then we're going to pass or create a dictionary here, and it's going to have the name backup folder 2022 and the MIME type, basically same thing here, application slash vnd dot google apps dot folder. Like that. So this is the metadata, and this metadata is now going to be used to create an actual file, in this case folder, not file. So file is going to be service.files.create, and the body of the file is going to be file metadata, and the fields are going to be ID, and we're going to execute that to create such a folder. And then we're going to get this folder, the folder ID actually, so the ID of the folder to know which one it is, because we're going to need that to put stuff in that folder. We don't just want to create the folder, we also want to put stuff in that folder, so we need to identify it. So the folder ID is going to be file.get ID, like that. So this is the case if the folder does not exist. Otherwise, if it does exist, we're going to do the following thing. We're going to say folder ID equals response files, because now we do have the file, so we did find something. And we want to get the first thing that we found, and we want to get the ID of that. So in both cases, we get the ID in a different way. Here we create, and then we get the ID. And here we get the ID from the response directly, since it found something. And this folder is now what we're focusing on. And all we need to do now is we want to iterate through the files that we have here in the backup files, and we want to upload those into the folder. So we're going to say for file in OS list dir, so list all the files in the directory, and we're going to say, okay, the directory that we're looking at is backup files, and the file metadata is going to be derived from the file now. So the file metadata is going to be just name, whatever the file name is, and parents is going to be the folder ID, because this basically means put that file into the folder that we created or we found, backup folder 2022. And that's that. So this is how we put that in there. And we want to create a new media file upload. So we're going to say media equals media file upload. And the name actually the name is an F string, which is backup files slash file, like that. So this creates the media, and the last thing that we need to do is we need to create that file. So file, actually maybe not file, let's call this a different thing. Upload file equals service.files.create. The body is the file metadata. The media body is media, and the fields are ID, and then we execute that. And last but not least, we can just print backed up file There you go. So that's that. I think, though, that we're going to have a problem because I didn't enable the Google Drive API yet. OAuth client was deleted. I think I'm running an old main file, so let me run this one here. Yeah, so the first thing that happens is when you run that, you're going to be asked to actually accept this. So to actually choose an account to access this tutorial backup app with, and I'm going to use Neural G Drive here. I'm going to click on it, and basically it says Google hasn't verified the app because it's our app. It's not an official app that was verified. It doesn't really matter. We click on continue because we trust ourselves, and then we continue here. And you can see here the authentication flow has completed. Now, depending on the scopes you choose, you're going to have to agree on different things. So this is why this prompt is there, to basically tell you, okay, this application wants to do X, Y, Z. Are you okay with that? And if we extend the scope, we're going to have more things that we have to agree to. But essentially it says, okay, the authentication flow has completed. You may close this window. So we can go now into PyCharm, and you can see here that we got an error for 403, which is basically forbidden. And the reason for that is access not configured. Drive API has not been used in this project. So I can enable it by visiting that link. And I'm going to do so. I'm going to click on that. And this is going to get us back into the cloud platform. And here we have to enable the Google Drive API for this application, otherwise this won't work. So we enable this, and I hope this is it. Let's see how long it takes. There you go. And now it should work. So first of all, let's run this again and see if we have some problems. Okay, we have another problem here. Is it the same one? All right, seems like it just took a couple of minutes to be actually enabled. Now it works. All we need to do is we need to run the script, and then it's going to back up the files into the cloud. And for that, we can go into Google Drive. You can see I don't have any files here. I don't have any directories here. Also in the trash, no files, nothing. And now I can go to PyCharm and run the script, and it's going to be authorized immediately because we have the token. And then you see backed up file, backed up file, backed up file. And now I can go into Drive, and we see here the new directory backup folder 2022. And in here a couple of files. You can see here the picture, the text, and so on. Now I can go ahead and delete those. And I can also delete them from the trash here. And we still have the directory, so we still have the folder. And I can go ahead now and run this one more time. And you see backed up, backed up, backed up. And the folder is still here with the new content. And the good thing is that it didn't create another folder, right? So we can go ahead now and delete this, and it's going to create a new one. Important thing, you want to also delete it from the trash, because otherwise it's going to find the trash. It's going to find this folder in your drive in the trash, and it's going to upload there. You don't want that. There's a more complicated way to filter what is in the trash and what not, but the best thing is to just delete it completely, and then we can run it again, and it's going to upload the files into the new directory backups 2022. There you go, backup folder 2022. So this is how you automate your backups using the Google Drive API in Python. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.